on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
We will start the session in 2-3 minutes. I request you to be patient. We'll start at 3:34. We will start the session now. Pranita, over to you.
Okay. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, we can hear you, Pranita.
Okay, great. A very good afternoon to everyone. We are pleased to invite you all for the second edition of the LGBTQ event today in association with Société Générale. The webinar will throw light on the topic LGBTQIA, social responsibility and inclusivity at the workplace. Before we start the session, I request all the participants to please mute yourselves through the course of the presentation. Cameras must be turned off throughout the webinar. Please mention any questions in the chat box. Kindly mention your name, your company name, while you address the questions to the organizers only. So now I request our Director General, Ms. Payal Kanwar, to please share the welcome remarks.
Thank you so much, Pranita. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second edition of this annual conference on LGBTQIA at the workplace. Today, we have a fantastic lineup of speakers across two panels, and the discussion will be around diversity and inclusion practices and the steps that have been taken to make workplaces more inclusive. In today's world, we can see that a diverse workforce with an inclusive culture has become a business imperative. According to a recent study by McKinsey, the relationship between diversity and executive teams and the likelihood of financial outperformance have strengthened over time. In India, so much has been happening over the past few years. Of course, we know about the historical 377 judgment, which was passed 4 years ago now. And we have some very prominent, eminent panelists with us in the first and second session. So I really look forward to hearing from you today on what the progress has been and what's really going on the ground. So thank you very much to everybody for joining us. And I'd now like to pass over to Mr. Philippe Gabulon, who is CEO for Société Générale Global Solution Center in Romania and Deputy CEO for Société Générale GSC in India. Over to you, Mr. Gabulon.
Thank you. And first, on behalf of Société Générale, I would say that we are deeply humbled and honored to co-host this second edition of LGBTQIA on social responsibility and inclusivity at the workplace. As you mentioned, there's been some very important changes in the landscape in India since 2018. Where the scrapping of the Section 377 legislation decriminalized the consensual sex between two adults of the same gender. This change greatly contributed to the recognition and the full decriminalization of the LGBTQ+ community in India. And radical changes have taken place both socially and also in the corporate spaces, in becoming more open and inclusive. From a social perspective, people are seeking recognition for their identities, recognition for their partners, acceptance of their lifestyle, and fight for further rights like marital and adoption rights. The social media and online platforms have played a major role in spreading information and developing awareness. Online movie platforms in India are making content which was unimaginable 4 years ago, bringing discussions to the dinner table. Queer topics are no longer taboo. Parents also are coming ahead, talking about their queer children openly. Saurabh Kripal, Delhi High Court judge, Duty Chang, sportswoman, referring to the panel as well, Keshav Suri, Parmesh Sahani are examples of few individuals in the mainstream who are out and proud. There is also a growing culture of allies. If we take now the corporate perspective, what was traditionally perceived as somehow uncomfortable topic today is key to any organization ethos. Corporates have been playing an active role as well as compared to 4 or 5 years ago. Most companies now have ERGs, employee resource groups, articulated around multiple communities. There's been also more focus on policies, internal policies in this company, such as same-sex couple insurance benefits, gender reassignment surgery, gender-neutral bathrooms, inclusive language like pronouns. We have seen more and more out and proud employees feeling safe to be themselves at the workplace. Also, there's been a more open dialogue with the community and more sponsorship event as this one. I would finally like to congratulate IFCCI for taking this step and playing an active role in bringing corporates and community stalwarts together to create a resource pool to deliberate on LGBTQ+ D&I and policies. On that note, it gives me a great pride to formally announce the beginning of that session. We have 2 very interesting panel discussions, one on transformation towards social acceptance, and another one on equal opportunity and inclusion of the LGBTQIA community at workspace. I will now let the moderators introduce our panelists, and I'm sure we will have a wonderful session together.
Dear Mr. Tabulo, thank you for your kind message. We already have Mr. Parmesh Shahani with us, who will introduce the panel and take this forward. Over to you, Parmesh.
Thank you. A big thank you. Thanks to you, Philippe and Mahesh from SocGen, and to Bruno, Payal, the entire team of the Indo-French Chamber for co-hosting this. I feel so happy to return back here after last year's event with my book. It feels like home, and I'm just so glad that you're doing this yet again. Keshav and Nandita are old friends, and Consul Sami Bwakaze, Deputy Head of Mission, welcome back to Bombay after 20 years. So, I don't want to do long, elaborate introductions. I just want to say that all 3 of you are superstars from various fields. Keshav from business as an entrepreneur and the incredible work, Keshav, you have been doing, in business, in hotels, and through your foundation. Nandita from media, as an actor, as a filmmaker, and as an activist as well. And of course, Sami, with the incredible revolutionary work you've been doing through diplomacy. I have a phrase in my book that I call Jugaad Resistance, which is about bringing about change from within the system. And you've been doing that so well in your entire career as well. So all of you are all doing such incredible work in terms of transformation. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So to everyone who has joined in and who is listening, I'm going to ask the panel some questions, and we will open it up then to all of you. So please keep on sending your questions to the organizers, and then they will send it to us later to be asked. But I want to start by asking each of you, my panelists, about just one transformation that you have done or been, part of, that you've been proud of with regard to the LGBTQ community specifically. And Sami, I'm just wondering if we can start with you, and then Nandita, I'd love you to share, your experiences, and then Keshav. So Sami, tell us about one transformation.
Okay, thank you, Parmesh. Hello, Nandita and Keshav. Happy to share the panel with you. Thank you very much, Bruno, and the whole IFCI team to organize that. Well, I don't know if proud is the right choice of word for the transformation. I'm happy about it. But let's say that's a transformation that I couldn't be more grateful for. In 2002, so exactly 20 years ago, the French government passed the law creating the PACS, which is the civil partnership, that could be signed between two adults of the same sex, not only, but of the same sex. And so, well, 20 years ago, that's exactly what we did. That we signed that civil partnership, and that was the second best thing to a wedding certificate, because at that time it was not possible. And in doing so, we were the first same-sex couple to be legally bound here in India, because we signed that at the French consulate. Well, actually, we should congratulate my colleague at the French consulate at the time. So yeah, well, yeah. Actually, I'm kind of proud of that. Let's be honest. And you know, it is, since then it's been a trend, because in 2013, that's when the marriage for same-sex couple became legal in France. And so in 2014 we got married, and let me tell you, that was a transformation. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you. I think you know, on a more serious note, it's having our family, having our couple recognized like any other. Yes, that was a life-changing moment.
Thank you, Sami. And I could see Keshav nodding along to that. Although, you know, technically Keshav has in parallel also been talking to me on the side about gay divorce, but that's a separate topic altogether. You know, straight, queer, whatever. Nandita, I want to ask you about your, just tell us about one transformation that you've done or been part of, you know, over the years that you've been proud of. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, first of all, thank you, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be on these panels, because it's a reminder of where we are and where we want to go. Are you able to see me? I felt
Yes.
like everything froze for a second. Okay. Okay. So it's been a little over 25 years that I did my first film, which was Fire. And I think it changed a lot for me personally in terms of my work. And I want to believe that also it really sort of triggered a conversation in the public space about LGBTQIA. I mean, at that time, there was no such term. It was just homosexual. I do think that we've come a long way in these 25 years. And I think Fire could take a little bit of credit in bringing that whole conversation, you know, out in the open, instead of pretending that these things didn't exist, or, you know, the biases, the prejudices, the double standards, the hypocrisy. In a way, it's great that it all got an opportunity to come out so we could address it. So yeah, 25 years ago, I acted in the film, not ever wanting to be an actor, not knowing what this story would lead me to, and what it did to my whole journey, both in terms of films and my social advocacy, that it really brought me close to this whole idea and this whole notion of the other, and how we create these silos, and, you know, what we call normal or not, and how deeply prejudiced and discriminatory we are as a society. And not coming only from a place of guilt, but coming from this place of awareness that we are all part of it and we are all complicit in it. And how do we truly become a change? And the only way you become a change is by constantly sort of having those opportunities to talk about it, to give a ear to people who want to come out or who want to share. So that has led me to many such conversations, many such movements, many such interactions with the community. And I think I have personally grown a lot. So I don't know whether I've transformed, but it definitely, that whole experience has transformed me, and I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you. So
and I'm an ally. I'm a full-on true ally, and I think we all need allies. So don't undermine them.
Yeah.
Sometimes
sorry, Nandita, I bet 25 years ago that you would be an ally, you would be talking about this 25 years later also.
True. No, because sometimes it feels like, okay, it's the community, but this whole them and us is also, I think I'm sometimes very uncomfortable with that definition, because I think, who is the community? I feel like, people who are liberal, who want a more peaceful, loving world, people who are wanting to live and let live, that's the community in a larger sense. So, I mean, maybe I'm being more idealistic, but then I feel I'm part of the community. I don't have to be gay to be part of the community. I'm part of the community because I just believe that there should be freedom and love and choices for everyone. And therefore, so do include me. Yes. I'm not so savvy, but I'm learning to be young and all of that. But
yes, you are very much part of our community, and
thank
so
you.
much richer for it. Yeah, Keshav, you tell us about one transformation that you have been part of, or that you're with regard to LGBTQ that you've been proud of.
Hi. So I think sorry to just come to Nandita's point about being a part of the community. I think this is why I love the word queer, right? Because that just basically means everybody and anybody can be a part.
We're all queer.
and so Nandita, I mean, for what you've done 25 years ago, and at that time, Fire was considered a queer movie. That means that you are really, you're more than just a part of the community. You're an accomplice in our community, I think, not just.
I'm very happy to be a partner in crime.
Yeah. And of course, Sammy, as you know, I am married to a French man, a French guy. And
good luck.
I know. I'm suffering every day, and that's why I'm asking that, just like how there is marriage equality, there should be divorce equality as well, and so that I can have a husband number 2 and 3.
That's forbidden. You cannot divorce a Frenchman. I'm terribly sorry. I
know that I come from a Punjabi family, so in any case, my mother's not going to allow that. Divorce is just a taboo.
So forget about it.
Fine. Just you cannot be divorced. So I think that I mean, of course, getting married was, I wouldn't say a transformative idea, but what I would say is that a lot of the work that I've done personally is very well documented in Parmesh's book. So everybody go buy a copy of Queeristan. Or somebody mentioned Saurabh Kirpal. And so Saurabh has also written a bunch of essays where I'm featured in. I wrote an essay there called Sex in the Supreme Court. And I think that what I think we did at the Lalit Suri Hospitality Group was we were the first, and probably for a very long time, the only mainstream hospitality chain that truly embraced, empowered, and mainstreamed the LGBTQIA plus community. And it is because of what we did at the hospitality group that I could actually file my writ petition in the Supreme Court. I was one of the petitioners that filed for decriminalization of gay rights and homosexuality, and so it's basically for the reading down of 377. And I think that the only reason I could do that is because I had an army of queer people supporting me. That was the people working in my companies who were allies. What we did very clearly was everybody took an equality pledge. I checked with my team before I put my neck and my company's neck on the line. And I got to say that we did it before. It was just like how Nandita did it back then, before the reading down, before when companies were not really willing to take a risk because they felt that it was a criminal act and therefore they would get into a lot of trouble. A lot of the legal fraternity or the legal teams of companies in India were refusing to be allies or give jobs or equal opportunities. Now we talk, of course, a lot about covering, transition, the SRS surgeries, and covering, same-sex couples as insurance. But we did that actually before the reading down of 377. And we went to our insurance company and we basically very clearly told them that if you don't do this, we'll go somewhere else. And I think it would be very sort of hypocritical of me to sit over there and be one of the leaders of the company who's getting married and sort of using their own privilege for their own good, because I have to constantly check my privilege, and not do the same for the other team members working in my company, the other 3,500 team members, and not in some way or the other provide an safe space, but also an equal opportune space for them to be who they want to be. And if I'm taking advantage of that, then they should certainly be able to take that advantage of me and my company. That led to, of course, my foundation, which is the Keshasuri Foundation. And now I'm going to shut up because I can just keep on rambling. But I think that was it.
Thank you, Keshav, for just, again, everything that y'all have been doing personally, right? All three of you have been pioneers, which is why I was just so excited to have this conversation, all three of you. Now, from something you've done, I want you to share with all of us listening one transformation, especially in today's now post-COVID, and we don't know when that will happen, but in today's world, I think the past few years have been quite seminal in that sense, right? So we have a unique opportunity at this moment to help imagine and create something better. So I want you all three, again, with regard to LGBTQ, share one thing with me, either one transformation that you would want to see in the world of tomorrow, or one thing that you're already seeing, an organizational initiative, something personal that is exciting you about, this better tomorrow that we are all moving into with regard to LGBTQ. And Nandita, if I can ask you to start this time, followed by Keshav and then Sam.
While there have been many achievements, I would say, in the last couple of decades, there is also a long way to go. I mean, while we say there is much lesser prejudice, great that 377 has finally been scrapped, but it's the mindset. And, we are basically a traditional feudal society. So, and a patriarchal at that. So it is going to take time. And now that I'm a mother and a mother of an 11-year-old, I'm privy to a lot of conversations of children. And I do feel what makes me really hopeful is that generation. Of course, I mean, when we say children, we can never generalize in India because it depends which class you belong to and, the privileges of education and social privileges, etc. But I see in that age group that they are far less judgmental. Like I tried to talk to my son about it and I thought, okay, you feel also very responsible that you're a mother of a son and you've got to make sure that they grow up with a sense of sensitivity and understanding and especially on gender and all of that. And I realized that they don't come with that baggage. They don't come with we had to break certain mindsets and, fight for it. I see my son being very, very comfortable around the LGBTQI, conversations these are not just big words, but even when you talk to him about, well, say you see someone at a restaurant and, we talk about it and what is the kind of mindset they have? They're far more open, less judgmental. And this whole thing of that, yes, why is it even a question? What I really like is that they are starting from the fundamentals, that why are we even talking about it? Why is it even important? Why should that person not be free to be the way they want to be? Like one of his friends who he grew up seeing as a boy, and now he's in the US, but that child decided that at 5 or something, that no, but I like being like a girl, and I don't like it when people call me he. And so I was just sharing those stories that the mother had shared with me. And he looked at me, he says, yeah, but why are we even discussing? I mean, that's completely that person's choice. And I think to sort of break down the fundamentals on this is amazing, So I really am feeling very hopeful, and we have to find ways in how we can bring it as part of our education. Because for that to happen as adults, we have to change, and our mindset have to change, because what we otherwise do, we implant our own prejudices in our children. So it seems sometimes like a long and difficult path, but I think the schools can play an important role. The parents can play an important role in being more honest to themselves, so that they can raise children who are far more sensitive and believe in, sort of our basic values, which are very conveniently forgotten when it comes to LGBTQIA issues. And other discriminations as well, on religion, caste. We are great at discriminating anyway, so it's across board.
Thank you, Nandita, and it's so hopeful that that we are seeing this in your son and this generation as well. How to enable that to flourish is our responsibility, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. Keshav, what is giving you hope in terms of what you are seeing in terms of society changing, or anything that you would want more?
So I'm going to actually just sort of bounce off what Nandita talked about. And she talked about the kids and the new generation coming up in schools. And I want to share a little story about my aunt who passed away last week. And so it's a little raw and fresh, but a day before she passed, and I kid you not, she runs a school called Step by Step, which was started as a nursery school in New Delhi, and then a larger school in Greater Noida. And single-handedly, she made it a very successful school. And she's an aunt. I grew up with her. She's like my mother. And all the years that I've been doing all this blah-blahing about LGBTQ rights and on all that I do at the hotel, I never once said to her that I want to, speak at the school, or I should speak at the school, or I'd like to, because I wanted it to happen organically. And just the day before she passed away, she called me up. She never involved me in any sort of conversation about, how she would do the interview process. But she interviewed a same-sex couple who also happened to be our neighbors in where she stays. And they had children via surrogacy. And she basically was so moved by their story. And on more than that, she was like, I want them to be the ambassadors. I want their kids in my school. And I want them to be the ambassadors for today and tomorrow. And then she immediately called me up and said, I need you to be involved in this, because I'd like you to handhold with them, because what I can't do is promise them that their children will not be bullied. But what I do want to do is I want to make an example of this. I want to talk about it. I want people to know that I am, and Step by Step is taking same-sex couples, children, be it via surrogacy or adopted. And I want if the majority of people get offended by this, including parents and the children, if they say something, I want to go back to them and tell them that, why don't you go to another school? Because you may have many options here in India. This couple will not have that many options that will be so proud to take these kids. And that's going to stay with me, of course, for life. And I think that's what's the kind of accomplice, I guess, that we need is my aunt. And I'm hoping, of course, I'm going to make sure that this happens in this conversation that we did just goes further. Yeah.
Thank you, Keshav. Sammy, do you want to share your thoughts? Yeah.
Yes, actually, what you know, when you shared the question with us, and that second one, I thought about something that happened just right the day we discussed, and that's not something I'm happy about, and I'll let you know. But listening to what just Keshav just said, and Nandita about her son. Something that we can be hopeful with is, for the young ones. I mean, it's that when we make all this something very natural, then the kids don't. I mean, they're not bothered by it. Actually, I was thinking about my own nephews. So we are called the gunkles, the gay uncles, and let me tell you that we are way cooler than the parents. That's there is no discussion about that. And but. I remember. I mean, for my nephew, 20 years ago, the day we signed the civil partnership, I was getting phone calls from my parents, and my brother called me, and then he said, "Oh, Eli wants to speak with you." And he's my nephew, he's the elder one, and he's my godson as well, and he was 6 years old, and. I pick up the phone and I said, "Hello, darling, how are you doing?" And he said, "Yeah, Daddy told me that you just got married." I said, "Yes, that's right." To a gentleman. I said, "Yes, that's right." Okay. And then you run away because, of course, he had something much more important. He was playing, I don't know what. And for him, it was not an issue. I mean, it's okay. You are getting married. Well. Fine, great. what do you see? It's the. I mean, it is just natural. Okay, Sami is getting married. That's fine. Let's move on. I mean, I'm busy playing. And it's and for my second nephew, that might be a bit more. He's very cool, but it takes things more personal. And I remember one day my brother telling me that he was called at school because Joseph, that's his name, got into a fight. Okay, and so he went to school, picked him up and all. And so Joseph was not very happy. And my brother asked him what happened. And he said, "Yeah, that guy was using a homophobic slur to insult somebody. And I told him to stop once." And so my brother said, "Yeah, that's good." But then, and he said, "Yeah, but he kept on going." And so I told him to stop twice because I mean you cannot use those words as an insult because it's not bad to be what you are. I mean, to describe the word you are using. And so my brother said, "Yeah, no, that's good. It's good to insult." But then what happened? And he said, "Well, the guy kept on, so I punched him in the face." And so, of course, we don't condone violence. But the fact is, for my nephew, it was just like it's normal. It's something good. So. I believe that my nephews are extraordinary young gentlemen, and I have a niece also, and I'm sure, Nandita, that your son is a wonderful young guy. But I think it's also thanks to you. You see what I'm saying? I mean, in terms of education, it's that's part of life. Guys fall in love with girls, and guys fall in love with guys. That's about it. And okay, let's move on. And the other transformation I wanted to speak about, and actually that's definitely less funny. You know that the ban on conversion therapy was voted into a law by the French Parliament 2 days ago. 2 days ago only. I mean, you know, the day we were chatting and preparing the panel, that's when. So one could be very happy about that, but I cannot feel good about it. I'm appalled that we I mean, we are in 2022. I mean, to get rid of this, I don't have a word for that. I mean, barbaric, absurd so-called therapies, and actually, to be honest, I'm a bit ashamed with me, because I didn't know that it was not yet forbidden in my own country. It's only when they were. I learned that they were discussing it in Parliament that I realized. I said, "Oh, okay." So I'm not saying that conversion therapies were happening in France. The fact is, they could have. I mean, because it was, so now it's forbidden. And, conversion therapy, conversion into what? Thinking that this can change. I mean, and I mean, I'm sure you have been, you've seen documentaries about that, or even movies about it, and you know how barbaric it is. I mean, it's so the fact. I mean, for me, I was saying, okay, France, it's not too religious a country. We have. There is a separation of church and state. I mean, since 1902, and honestly, I was the 2 days ago. I was shocked. I mean, happy that finally it got voted out, but shocked that it only happened 2 days ago, and we are, in 2022. So, yeah, as I think Nandita said, yeah, there's still a long way to go, and I think that's going to transfer into the next question.
Yeah, and we started getting questions. So Bruno, I'm going to leave it to your elegant judgment when to interrupt and help wind this up. But I want to ask you all, and Sami, just again, building on what you just said, right? And this is why social acceptance is important. And it's what we started this conversation with, right? Transformation towards social acceptance. And while the following panel is going to talk more about business, I really want to ask all of you about why you feel that it's so important that we bring about this change through society. Because a lot of people have been telling me for the past 30 years, why are you talking about these things in public? Why do you want social acceptance? No one is bothering you. Why do you talk about it? Whenever I talk about LGBTQ issues, right? And in the past couple of years as well, people say, now it's a misconception, but people say 377 is gone. So now I just want to keep on harping about it, right? At least in our country. And Sami, you were saying, there are parts of the world, including India, where conversion therapy happens regularly, for example. And there are parts of the world, including India, where we don't have PACs or any form of marriage equality, for example, right? So, and I remember last time, Sami, and you were not here, but when we had the Kurdistan book event at IFCCI, I believe there was some feedback as to why is Indo-French Chamber doing queer book releases? Is that even the role of a Chamber of Commerce? So I want to start by asking you, and then Nandita and Keshav, why is social acceptance so important? Why should we be talking about LGBTQ rights and inclusion issues in 2022? Sami, do you want to go first? And then,
okay. As a diplomat, I would say that convincing an opponent, or at least making him or her consider your position, that's the real job. This is what diplomacy is about. I mean, changing others' perspective. And so, of course, it's doing that with one of your friends doesn't. I mean, you need to do that with somebody that does not agree with you, and of course, it makes you end up discussing with sometimes people that are not too. What should I say? Savory character to speak with, but that's that's what diplomacy is about, I think. And in our case, in the topic we are having now, I think it's important, of course, and it's a constant struggle because, many people think that this is, how do they say, lifestyle, that is a choice, and therefore it's something that it could be changed. That's the mindset. And since it is not a lifestyle, a choice or a phase, people need to get over it and accept it, because it is who we are, and we simply cannot change that. It is important. I mean, social acceptance, because actually the fact itself that the question is raised shows that it is still very much necessary to speak about it. Okay, let me just give you one figure, actually two. You know that gay and bi persons are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than the general population, and trans people are 7 times more likely to kill themselves. So, I don't want to be angry, but yeah, let's talk about it. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about it in public. And when you said why do you want to speak to make this conversation public? Well, it has to be made public, and not it's not about these dirty little things that you have in mind, because they don't want you to speak about it publicly, because, well, you know what they are thinking of, yeah, of course we are bothered when we don't enjoy the same rights as the rest of the population. And actually, I would say, instead of wondering why we still need a gay pride, you just need to be thankful that you don't need a straight pride to ascertain your basic human rights. I mean, that for me, that's exactly what it is all about.
Thank you. Thank you. Keshav, I wonder if you want to share your thoughts, and then Nandita. Keshav, you also get this a lot. I do talk about this all the time. So, and Nandita, you too. So.
Sammy said it so eloquently and so beautifully. I don't know if I have too much to add to that, but I think that, yes, of course, I got it a lot. But why don't you just, your family accepts you, or your team accepts you? So I think maybe just keep quiet. Wouldn't it be easier? Wouldn't life be easier? And my point is coming back to what my aunt said. Also, look the other way. If you don't want to hear it, if you don't want to speak about it, there are other things that you can focus on. But we're not going anywhere. We're here. We're queer. We get used to it. It's now, I think the conversation, and Parmesh, you've said this also many times, I think now we need to stop having conversations and actually action so much of what has been discussed, be it the anti-discriminatory policies, be it the fact that our community needs jobs, needs to be seen, needs to be heard. Let's look at just the trans community within the subsections of the LGBTQIA+ community in India. Whilst the trans community may have certain amount of rights, and there is the Nalsa judgment, and there is the trans bill that is also in the parliament, let's be honest, as far as societal acceptance goes, it's 0 or it's below 0. why is it that only a small little hospitality chain like mine is supposedly the largest, has the largest number of trans people working for them? Why is it that other hospitality chains have not done the same? Why is it that the options given to trans people in this country still is either sex work or out the street and begging? Why is it that their repertoire of options and skill-based training just on those two? So I think that it's enough of us to go around in circles and pat each other on our back. Of course, I've been a big proponent of, yes, we should have things like the workplace equality index, and we should definitely talk about why it's important to have queer inclusion in companies. But I think that we need to see more of it. We need to reach a point where it's not just a boardroom conversation. It needs to be now in actual reality. And I think that high time. I mean, look at the difference it makes now suddenly when you see these TV shows and when you see movies like Chandigarh Gaya Ashiki and Ek Ladki Ko Dekha To Aisa Laga. I mean, all these movies that just came about now. After, of course, Fire did that 25 years ago, but now it's become this sort of conversation. And whilst that's happening, so many people are coming up and saying, oh, wow, oh, we didn't know about this, or we didn't hear about it. I myself in my own company have so many people who've come up and said that, well, we never heard about the LGBTQIA plus community before we came to the Lalit and some of your sensitization workshops. I think that, this is why it's important to do it. And this is why it is important to have societal acceptance, because there is being oblivious about it, and then there is willful oblivion. And I think right now we're just basically willfully ignoring such a large part of our community and country.
6 to 10% of any population, for all those who are listening, are LGBTQ. That's more than 100 million Indians, just for example, right? So Nandita, your thoughts?
Yeah. Mine is buzzing with many thoughts, to be honest. I mean, my own journey, I'm sort of revisiting it, because I remember when Fire first came out, and even English dailies, when they would ask questions, they didn't even have the vocabulary. They didn't even know how to express it. They would say, oh, like, were you uncomfortable when you did that kind of a scene? Or, when, or there would be a slur like, oh, you're a lesbian. Even now I get it on social media. If I talk about something totally different, it's supposed to be a slur to say you are a lesbian, or something like that. So, I mean, I think in some sense, we've come a long way. But I remember when we did Fire, they said, oh, isn't this too ahead of its time? And I was like, really? Is it ahead of its time, or is it already too late? So in 2022, we're still asking that question. So when I was, for instance, when we talk about gender with my son, and I'm bringing him back because he's quite a teacher of mine. And, if he hears me say that, yeah, 50 years ago, I can understand, but it's today's day and age, why is there so much gap, let's say, if I say between a man and a woman? And he said, why do you say that it was okay 50 years ago? And I've realized that as adults, we are at fault that we are still forgiving our past and saying, at least in 2022, we shouldn't be asking this question. But the point is that it shouldn't have happened 50 years ago, then we wouldn't have been here today. So I think we owe it to the generations to come for them, so that they are not still struggling with the same issues and the same rights and the same conversations. So if not now, then when? And even in my 25 years, Fire was one, but because it exposed me to all these questions and various communities. I remember almost 10 years ago, I went to this Hijra Habba in Bangalore, and they were very keen that I come for it. And I said, listen, I have grown definitely since Fire, but I don't know if I understand enough about the trans community and some of my own bias, because there was going to be a fashion show. And I thought, what if I don't like it aesthetically? I don't want to pretend. And, I'm being very candid, and I was very confused. And they said, no, but, we have this police commissioner who's constantly beating our people in the community and are, putting them in jail. And we do need a strong person to counter that and all of that. And I went there, and there were almost like 10,000, and I'm not exaggerating, some of you might know, in this big park. And I was like, oh my God, and the amount of love and that I was showered with, the blessings I got that day in one single day. But I had lots of questions for them at that time. And I remember like literally bawling and thinking that what kind of a world we have created. And like Keshav said, that they are, sort of stuck in like either beggary or sex work, and it's just horrific. So I just feel that as a human being, forget about all politics and words and everything, just as a human being, how can you survive? How can you create any kind of a semblance and peace around you if you know that there are so many people being discriminated and are not being allowed to just be who they are or love the person that they want to love? I mean, so it really is like how Sammy was getting very agitated thinking that in 2022, this, conversion therapy, like I didn't know this was happening in my country. And I relate to that, because before FIRE, I understood it intellectually, but to be honest, I didn't understand it emotionally enough, or I wasn't exposed to the level of discrimination, because after that, so many people shared their stories, so openly with me, sort of assuming, and rightly so, that I was somebody who would hear it or was an ally. And I was just so appalled that even though I came from such a progressive family, my father is a painter, mother a writer, and, we had everyone coming to our houses, but we never really talked about it. And, you just suddenly feel that, oh my God, like, this is the world we've created. So I think if not now, then when? And, it's not even a question in any of our minds that this needs to be addressed, and that we need to find our own ways, whether in whatever our circle of influence is, however small or big or medium it may be, we have to just be at it to be able to see a more equal, a more, sort of dignified world for everyone.
Thank you, Nandita. And with that, I'm going to thank you once again, Keshav and Sammy. We've got a bunch of questions from Sandeep, from Danish, from Sangeeta, all of which are related to business. And you can ask those questions to the next panel, who are all going to be talking about business after that. But I want to thank the three of you for kickstarting this Jen, Indo-French Chamber. Thank you for continuing these conversations. As Nandita said, if not now, then when?
Yes,
exactly.
More of these. And over to you, Bruno and team. Once again, thanks, Keshav, Sammy, Nandita.
Thank you, Parmesh.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. Thank you, Keshav.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was really wonderful listening to all of you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Shahani, and all the panelists. It was really an insightful discussion that we could really engage into. So thank you once again. And moving forward, I would like to thank our co-sponsor of the event, Societe Generale. And I now would like to invite Mr. Mahesh Bhatija, Managing Director, Head Central Functions, IT and Operations, Societe Generale Global Solution Center, India and Romania, and Data Center of Expertise and CSR ESG sponsor, Societe Generale Global Solution Center, India and Romania. Over to you, Mr. Bhatija.
Thank you, Pranitri. And this has been an overwhelming and very personal experience for me, hearing the very, very eminent speakers who spoke really with their hearts on whether it was their respective stories, Parmesh, Keshav, Nandita, Sami. I found just this 35 minutes very transformative for myself. Thinking about, and Keshav in fact stole a bit, I would say, the thoughts in my mind. I was thinking about why now and why is it important the society performers. But media is just one form of why society is still struggling to accept it. And it's so evident of the fact that even 25 years, things have changed, but as many of the speakers said, there is a long way to go. I was really touched by the story of the last 25 years, which I've heard today, starting with from the timeline 25 years back, Nandita speaking about her first movie, Fire, It was one of the movies I saw personally, one of the first few movies I saw just after I was married. And my wife and me were quite stunned, of course, by the performances, but not so much about the story by itself, but how can this story be brought in the open as a kind of mainstream cinema, right? And probably is the first time those kind of questions sprung into my own head about not so much as natural, not natural, but why do we need to discuss it in public? So that's probably where the journey started. Then to hear Sami talk about the first civil partnership in India. I mean, it's really great to know that it was 20 years back, in 2002 when the first civil partnership took place, and Sami had his moment of pride. Of course, later on, going on to find the moment of transformation when he got married. And then how Keshav, challenged the system, really made it mainstream, using the entire collective influence he could generate to file the writ and really bring around the discussion on Section 377, which has been quite an important moment of transformation for us as a society, as a country, actually. So really, things which we can take away so much from, right? Whether you follow your heart, you follow your head and your belief in society, whether you take an approach which is challenging the system or not. And then moving on to how especially the theme of LGBTQIA, we are so judgmental as we grow up. We are so judgmental because of our prejudices. Nandita talked about we are still a kind of feudal traditional society. But actually, what gives us hope is really, the next generation, right? Whether it is Nandita's son, and I resonated a lot with what Nandita said about her son, because personally, when my daughter reached about 16, 17 years of age, she asked me very similar questions. So that was the second step I took in my own thought process of changing and recalibrating how I even talk about a topic like LGBTQ, or why should I even talk about that? Question was very, very pertinent, right? Why are we talking about it? And I could relate completely to that statement. But again, what was equally important was the example Keshav gave us about the future. It's across generations, right? His aunt, just before she was passing away, talking about children of same-sex parents being the ambassadors for not just for her school, but for society. And an ambassador on such an important topic. So really, that gave us a lot of hope about how it is, that the generations accept it. We can go beyond these prejudices. Yes, we have a long way to go, but it's clearly there is a lot of hope ahead of us. We are changing. We probably do need to accelerate the pace of change. And then finally, the last question the panel came to really around why is it important to talk about it in public? So we talked about suicide rates. We talked about discrimination and where societal acceptance is below zero. For me, I could completely. I was very, very struck by the two questions which Keshav and Nandita raised. If not now, when? 25 years back, 50 years back. If you go back and look at apparently ancient sculptures in India, same-sex relationships were not necessarily unique and not necessarily recent phenomena. But we have, as a society, developed prejudices about it and spoke about it in a certain mindset with a certain approach. But really, if not now, when? And the topic Keshav asked about why is the only thing that same-sex couples or trans couples do or trans people do is really work in the sex field or find jobs begging? Is that really what we want to do? And for me, that question is really very, very fundamental and probably a good transition to the next panel, which is going to talk about corporate, going to talk about jobs, really talk about being inclusive in the workplace and being creating equal opportunity, right? and we will have to fight the prejudices. We will have to create safe workplaces. Keshav has done it with the entire Lalit Suri chain to make it a safe place for many members of the community. But we as corporates will have to make that effort and continue to really change our own minds and influence the mindset of people we work with to make it a truly inclusive and equal opportunity for the LGBTQIA community, both in terms of opportunities and in terms of social acceptance and safety for them to work easily with us. Just before I end and just before I hand it back to Praniti to introduce the second panel who will talk about why can this community not find the right kind of jobs? Why can they not be accepted in the mainstream, whether it's in terms of business opportunity, work opportunity, safety, social acceptance, but really speaking more on the business part. The two things I personally took away, which from today, and I hope many of you did, I was very proud to know that as a career, I am part of the community. And it was very fulfilling to know that. I mean, being an ally is one thing, but the question was asked about we versus them. Suddenly you could transcend that question because you are part of the community. It's not we versus them anymore. And the hope that we have with the next generation, which I'm sure will accelerate very significantly the journey we have made in the last 25 years or 50 years. And I'm sure we will see a lot more change at a very rapid pace. With that, and hoping that the second panel will answer all the questions that are there and the questions which Keshav and Nandita have asked, if not now, when and why, I hand it back to Pranita to introduce the members of the second panel. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Bhatisha, for sharing your profound thoughts with us. And we are glad to have you with us. Moving forward, I would like to now introduce you all to the second panel of the event today. We have an esteemed panel with us today who will discuss the topic, equal opportunity and inclusion of the LGBTQIA community in the workspace. This panel will be moderated by Mr. Ravin Mirchandani, Chairman and Managing Director, Ador Powertrain. As panelists, we have Ms. Shamala Chaveri, Site Managing Director, IST Bangalore, IST Business Partner, Director Asia and Pacific China, Alstom. We then have a second panelist, Ms. Yamini Goyal, who is the Head of Human Resources at Moe, Tennessee. We then have Ms. Anubhuti Banerjee, Manager, IT Coordination and Improvement, Tata Steel Limited. And a fourth panelist for the day, Ms. Trinetri Arora, Tech Tribe Head, LGBTQ Lead from Societe Generale.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfectly fine. Over to you, Mr. Mirchandani.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for making time for this panel. It's going to be a hard act to follow after the previous panel with Paramesh moderating, Keshav and Sami, who have made some very big strides for the community in India, and also Nandita, who many of us from our generation have grown up having a big crush on from most of the movies that she's acted in. We have an esteemed panel here looking at a very well, I wouldn't say very different, but the same subject from a different perspective, and that's the perspective of the workplace, equal opportunity and inclusion of the LGBTQI+ community in the workplace. Introducing very briefly, as you heard their names already, Shamala Javeri, who is the site managing director for Alstom. Shamala has been with Alstom for 4 years. Before that was with Unilever, and before that with AIG. And her education comprises the universities of Bombay, Madras, and also Harvard. We have today Yamini Goyal, who is currently working as head human resources at Moe, Tennessee, India, and the Chandon Winery. She has worked with some of the recognized names in India, such as TCS and Mahindra Finance, and worked both in Europe and Southeast Asia, and recently returned from Philippines and will bring a very different perspective to equality in the workplace. We have Anubhuti Banerjee, who is the manager IT coordination and improvement at Tata Steel. Anu is managing the executive functions of the Office of the Chief Information Officer at Tata Steel. She's a former German academic exchange fellow and a Mingle Young LGBTQ leader. In 2018, she founded and leads now WINGS, the LGBTQ employee network at Tata Steel, and has been a true advocate for the LGBTQ community, looking at the particular challenges that the community faces in the workplace. And finally, we have Trinetri Arora, head of the Tech Tribe and Diversity, lead of the Société Générale Global Solution Center in India. Trinetri has been an ally of the LGBTQ community for as long as she can remember. She's been a corporate leader with over 18 years of IT experience and was instrumental in setting up the LGBTQ+ chapter at Société Générale from scratch in 2018. So to help set the scene, ladies and gentlemen, deeply embedded homophobic and transphobic attitudes, as we've heard in the first panel, often combined with a lack of adequate legal protection against discrimination, as we have in India, discrimination particularly on the grounds of sexual orientation of gender identity, expose many of the LGBTQI community of all ages and in all regions of the world to serious violations of their human rights. They are discriminated against in the workplace and in labor markets, in schools and even in hospitals, and often even mistreated and sometimes disowned by their own families. In India, as with everything, we have a parallel universe. Article 377 was addressed in courts, and unlike some countries in our region, we have the luxury of being able to participate in a panel to discuss this publicly and with transparency. Yet, that does not mean that the life for the LGBTQI+ community is fair, transparent, or inclusive. Cup panchayats, family pressure, and the blind biases that result from cultural upbringing mean that discrimination in the workplace is quite normal and happening without people even realizing it. According to a recent UN study, high levels of the LGBTQI community, 21% in China and 30% in the Philippines, 23% in Thailand, reported to being harassed, bullied, or discriminated against by others in their workplace due to their sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression of their sex. We don't yet have a granular data on this in India, and I suspect it'll take some time to come as stats are not published or easily available. So here we are with experts on this panel today in an endeavor to address this from the perspective of equal opportunity and inclusion in the workspace in India. And for the first question, I'd like to propose it to the whole panel actually, because we heard Nandita say we are a deeply prejudiced and biased society, and that could be true for anywhere in the world, right? You could be in the Midwest in America and you could still face a deeply prejudiced and biased set of people. But the reality is, in India, in terms of equality, we're not even at gender equality today in the workplace. And you'd be hard pressed to get religious equality in the workplace. If you do a dipstick analysis of how many Muslim candidates get jobs in a lot of companies in India, you'd find that that's probably not happening the way it should either. And here we are talking about the LGBTQI+ community. And so the first question, and I want to set the scene, my job is to be incendiary. These are not my opinions, but I'm wanting to bring out your opinions on the matter. So I will be incendiary with the question. So my question to you, is it actually relevant to have this panel? Are we ready for this panel? Or are we addressing issues on equality way ahead of where they should be? Are we challenging the cultural context of India in a way that India might not be able to handle in the workplace? And so I'll throw this first to Shyamala, coming at it from the perspective of Managing Director of his site, and then we'll go around the panel.
Thank you, Robin. Is the question relevant to workplace? Is it something that is relevant for discussion at workplace? Absolutely, yes. The biological sex of a child is something that is assigned at birth. Gender identity is a psychological sense of self. Expression is how a person chooses to express their gender, while the orientation is who one is attracted to. And the question that is often asked is, if it is so personal, why does it beg the relevance at a workplace? It begs the relevance at a workplace because of unconscious bias. Our biases are a sum total of our experiences. Sometimes we are aware of them, sometimes we are conscious of them. And there are others that we're just not conscious of. Just speaking from a community perspective, this community is at a higher risk of not finding employment. Most of the policies do not cater to this group. And as you rightly said, targeted disproportionately for harassment at workplace, and there is constant pressure for conformity. And guess what? That leads to constant self-editing. How out can I be? What if someone outs me? What is the impact this will have on my career? And these are some questions that beg to be answered. But then again, if you look from the employer standpoint, if you just look at the pink economy, the buying power is projected at over $4 trillion globally, and that is a market potential. It was also discussed in the previous panel, but statistics have proven that roughly 10% of any community is LGBTQ+. If we take a minute to pause and look at the numbers within our own organizations, we will be amazed that this is a huge talent pool that we are looking at. All companies are looking to be employers of choice for diverse talent, and it is against policy to discriminate. Last but not the least, it is about creating a culture of inclusion with a strong sense of allyship. When a firm creates a culture of LGBTQ+ inclusion, people are allowed to live their life honestly without having to do the pronoun dance. They can talk openly about their partners and their families without fear of judgment. The stress and anxiety that is caused by continual self-editing goes away. And the work environment becomes more open, more embracing, and one that leverages each other's strengths. But are we ready? We are opening, but are we there? Not yet. Why? Because it is a combination of education and practice. It is about depth of education and breadth of education, and sometimes it starts top down. For example, in Alstom and specifically in India, we have LGBTQ+ sensitization right from the management level to implementing e-learning modules. We also have employee resource group that ensure that what is being preached is actually brought into practice. We focus on demonstrated behaviors. We have policies we have strong zero tolerance policies, anti-discrimination policies to build a respectful workplace. We committed to a safe workplace that is a vocal ally, and we believe that targeted and specific sensitization is the key. Because while all of us are aware about this topic and aware of this community, we will become more open and become aware of unconscious bias, our own unconscious bias, and become an ally when we become more aware. I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Shamala. So coming then to someone from the HR perspective, we have Yamini. Yamini, do you want to address that from the perspective of culture and creating a culture in the workplace that sometimes is not afforded to the employees when they go home? And that's an open, inclusive, transparent culture, and therefore the relevance of this panel and where we should be taking this discussion.
Right. So I'm just coming back from the Philippines, as you said earlier. I got back to India a month ago, and I was kind of amazed how diversity and the inclusion of diversity in the workplace was quite narrow. We are still, as you said before, talking about gender equality, and we're not even talking about LGBTQ, right? In the Philippines, the office that we had 10% of our population that was openly a part of the community, and we had people in the leadership who were also openly a part of the community, which actually allowed a lot of representation throughout the company. And we can tell you for sure that the studies are right. Diversity actually leads to better business results, right? So I don't understand why an organization would not want to invest in getting people from the community into it. Me personally, I am not yet in a place where I can say at Moet Hennessy we have people from the community, but this panel probably is a great place for me to advertise. If you're part of the community and would like to work with Moet Hennessy, please send across your CV to me. We will not ask you to be openly a part of the community. You can keep it to yourself. I'm very fine with that, but bring that diversity to us. We like that. Okay. Now, Moet Hennessy as an organization, even in India, is a great place to work because we have overcome gender diversity at least. 57% of our population is women, and at the executive, but I really liked the whole conversation of if now, not now, when. I believe, like, not to compare, but if you take an example, we were not ready for a pandemic in any way, right? But once we had it, we're dealing with it, you know. So why can't we just have that change that we want to bring and not wait for it to happen? Why do we have to have so many things beforehand? Be completely prepared. If we just wait for perfection, it's just going to delay us. Let's get the right people in and we'll find a way to make them happy. with what we have. I mean, as it was said before, 10% people are part of the community. We just have to be allies. We can do that if we are given an opportunity. That would be my point of view here.
Thank you. Yamini, coming to you, Anu, you come from the traditional manufacturing sector. You're from Tata Steel. Now, the Tata Group is one of India's most forward-thinking groups, so fortunate for you that you work with them. However, your journey, I'm interested, must have been a complex and challenging one in terms of creating an atmosphere of acceptance within the workplace. What is your opinion on the subject of equality in the workplace and whether we should be addressing it in bits and pieces? Gender equality, religious equality, LGBTQIA equality, or there is a different way to look at this, because you've clearly achieved some major milestones in Tata Steel.
Thank you, Ravin. So I would like really start with the question that was asked, and it was an incendiary question, and then probably the answers also have to be incendiary. I would really say that the kind of times that we live in, the option really of sitting on our in a comfortable chair and waiting for something to take its natural course is just not possible. As mentioned, that we live in very queer times, and what we need right now are queer leaders. As Yamini mentioned very correctly, we did not know that the pandemic was coming, and once the pandemic came, there are so many old structures, old beliefs, which we suddenly found out that they do not serve us anymore. And we had to go through a very painful process of regrowing, and the ones who were able to regrow would be able to survive, and who are not, would not. So that is the kind of times that we live in, and we really can't, let things take their course and put priorities. The second thing that I say is that when you put a say priority on diversity, it doesn't put a priority on human life. It doesn't put a priority on the kind of people that we are. Me as a queer person, I wouldn't let anyone say that a queer person is less important for a workplace, for any kind of for a society, than having gender equality, having social equity. So how can I say that I should step back while someone else's problems get solved? So that is definitely not something that we can have. Coming to the point that you mentioned about, say, Tata Steel, the fact is that we started this journey. It was started by me at a point of time when even Section 377 wasn't taken off. And at that point of time, we were having these discussions that especially the kind of place that we operate in, we operate in tier 2 cities. We even have mining locations which are absolutely, very far away from the urban centers, which is generally where it is expected to be a more equal society and an equal, you can say, equitable society. So for us, the journey really was about not only transforming ourselves as a company, but transforming the society that is and is affected by us. Like you rightly mentioned, the Tata Group is something, is a brand and is a name that does have a lot of influence, and it does have a lot of social influence, and therefore we being in that position of being able to make this social influence change at least the geographies that we are in, and of course probably participating in sessions like this where we can affect more geographies than we can, is really part of our agenda, you can say. I'm very happy to say that we have quite a few queer people in our organization, including people from management, including people from our workforce, even in our mining locations. We recently hired some trans people who would be driving earth movers in our mining locations, and those are places where diversity probably wasn't talked of 4 or 5 years back, but when we launched this initiative that I call Wings, I remember the exact same thing was said. And it was said by one of our leaders that, we are starting this now, but should we have started it 10 years or 20 years back down the line? Because, we all have experiences. And I probably came at a point of time where it was much more easier to talk about it. I had the vocabulary for it, but I'm pretty sure that the generations that preceded us, if they had the vocabulary, if they had the social, I would say, the wave moving toward for them, I think they would have also transformed. So therefore, since we have this opportunity now, we shouldn't let it go.
Thank you very much. I know there's a host of questions in my head for that, but we'll come back to that. I'd like to give Trinitri a chance to take on the incendiary question and give us your opinion. Are we ready for this panel?
So my thing is, like even Shamala and Yamini did mention before me, if not now, when, right? There never will be a right time. So I think it is important that we take it head on at this point in time. And I do think that progress has already been made. To say that, I mean, at least in the corporate space, we do see, and like Shamla mentioned a few minutes ago, about the policies that are changing because people are acknowledging it, right? So I guess this is indeed the right time to take it on. And we are actually late in the game, but it's, always, it's better late than never. So.
Can I take your permission to just probe you a little bit on that? Coming at it a little bit in India is a culture of many thousands of years, and the culture swings in pendulums. Even the previous speaker mentioned how you have carvings in temples that were very accepting at a time, and today it'd be almost impossible to even make a painting like that and exhibit it at an art gallery. And that pendulum swings left and right all the time. And today we are in one form of that pendulum, which is unaccepting. That's the reality, and India tends to react rather forcefully. I use that word forcefully when you try to push it in a direction culturally that is unaccepted by the majority. And also we have a culture of don't ask, don't tell. The taxman tells you that when he comes and raids you and he tells you, oh, don't ask, don't tell us, and we won't do anything. That's the culture of how the whole country is managed. So in that context, do you still hold, are we ready? I'm pushing you, I'm being incendiary here. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience getting very upset with that question, but I'd love to hear your answer.
I still think we're ready. Come what may, unless we don't stand up, unless we don't, if it's not me, then who, right? If it's not, it's basically I speak for a group, right? If it's not us, then who, right? So culture, society, all of that will come and go. That will remain, that you can't do anything because the culture is a part of you, right? It's up to you to change that. And we have to be the torchbearers and the forebearers to move ahead. And I guess we're all trying in our own little spaces to do that. So
then let's dwell on that subject. Thank you.
That at the right time.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So we'll stay with that subject, and that is, it is the right time. We need to do this. And so the question is how? How does one tackle resistance to change when it comes to acceptance and equality on sensitive issues like LGBTQI in any organization? So maybe we can start with Anu, because you've been like the torchbearer in your organization, and then we'll go around the panel with that question.
That's actually a question that is very close to my heart, because I did face a lot of resistance when we were talking about it. And resistance doesn't always come as, someone completely opposing you or shouting you down. It comes in very softer ways, and it says that, why don't we take every case as it is? What if the laws don't support us? What does the government say about it? Because I was talking about it at a point where Section 377 wasn't yet legal, as in it wasn't yet struck down. And at that point of time, it was very simple for organizations to say that we need to respect whatever the law is there. But the fact is that it is not very difficult for organizations, for corporations to make respect the law of the land and also create possibilities for their own workforce. And one of the most important things of having of telling it to business is, of course, putting the business case forward of why does this need to be done? Why does LGBTQ inclusion need to be done? Now, let me give you a very simple example of why LGBTQ people bring something to the workplace which we probably don't see. We're talking about privacy a lot. And this conversation has started only in the last few years. But there are so many LGBTQ people specifically, and I would say even trans people, who knew about the dangers of internet and data being leaked, of privacy not being there. There are also questions of, now companies that are coming are almost all have to have a social media present, have to have content that goes out, have to have a brand. And if LGBTQ people aren't part of the organization, if they are not taken into decision making, you will find that every now and then a company will make mistakes. Case in point was Netflix. A few months back, there was this huge controversy about a comedian making transphobic remarks, and the reason because they did not have trans people in the hierarchy to be able to make decisions is why it brought on a lot of questions on how they do their business. So this is why we have to tell business that there is an advantage. I think Yamini or Shamla was talking about how the pink money is there, and all of the advantages are already counted for, and many people have made those business cases. But we also now have to start showing that that the generation that is coming, I say that they are a generation of worktivists, for whom work and activism will be at the same point. And Generation Z, you cannot have a happy Generation Z if you're not going to make a workplace that is conducive to them. So that's why the time that is coming is necessary, that we start evolving right away.
Thank you. I know that's brilliant. I love the term worktivist. I'm going to make a note of that. I'll throw the same question to Yamini, because you addressed this from the perspective of HR, Yamini, and we all know that culture eats strategy for breakfast. We know there's also the pink economy, and yet, you've come back to India, a very difficult place for cultural change in any organization that's not more than 6 months old. How does one tackle this resistance? How does one make the entire organization sensitive and inclusive?
Well, I think the best way that I can think of at this point of time would be have representation. As Anubhuti said, the reason that Netflix found out that they were in a soup was because they didn't have anyone who could have said something when something was wrong, right? We need to have people in the leadership in not just India, but also globally, who will be there as representation of the community. Right? People who are allies, yes, they can do a lot, but representation is representation. Okay, that's one big way to make sure that people can be a little more empathetic. It's easier. Somehow, the way we are raised, the way we see society, we understand and respect hierarchy and somehow connected to power. Seeing somebody at a higher level, perceived higher level, having empathy for them is easier, right? So if we can bring in people from the community and we can have them at levels where they can be representative, people will change. That would be the easier way, right? The more difficult way that Anubhuti has in a way taken, which Shamala has taken, is to change policy and make the change from inside. Bringing the advantage, showing it to people, sustaining it through years and years of hard work.
I think it's actually easier, for example, in your industry, because you're facing the consumer in a glamour end of the market. Do you think it's easier in film, in the sorts of industries that LVMH is in, and more difficult in, say, in the steel industry or manufacturing? Or do you think it's just a question of management and leaders getting their heads around it and saying, right, this is the rock we're going to move and we're just going to make it happen?
I wouldn't be able to answer that question because I only know what I know, right? It's easier for me to say these things sitting here because I have that privilege of working already with people from the community, right? I don't know if Anubhuti wasn't there, if people in Tata Steel would have that opportunity or not, or if Shamla wasn't there or Trinity weren't there, if people would have that voice or not, right? Maybe there are industries, alcohol industry is very difficult for women, isn't it? It's usually quite frowned upon, especially when it comes to women. But we have more women in the company than men. That's fair. I mean, you have to build it and they will come, So just go with it and give it a chance, I would say.
Brilliant. Build it and they will come. So we'll take the same question to Shamala from your perspective as a site MD, and of course in one of the traditional industries, where big traditional companies. How do we tackle this resistance and change, and bring about more inclusivity in the workplace?
See, if I were to just quote Daniel Radcliffe, I mean, he says it very beautifully. You don't have to be gay to be a supporter. You just have to be human. And more often than not, see, I have worked across multiple industries. I served in the Wall Street for over a decade. I worked at an FMCG, and now I'm working in the mobility industry, transport industry. And what I have seen is it's all about how stance the leaders take, what stance the firm takes, and what are the core values of the firm. And at Alstom, inclusion is a core value. There is a saying in Sanskrit, yad bhavam tad bhavati. What you think of, what you believe in, you will eventually be that. So when you are continually talking about inclusion, then you are sensitizing people about why it is important to be an ally, why is it important to make it a safe space to work. Eventually, even the hardest of nuts cracks. But having said that, is that an easy journey? No, it is not. But do you give it up? No, you don't. Every drop counts, every step counts, every small milestone is worth celebrating, but eventually the shift happens.
Excellent answer, Shamala. Thank you for that. And Trinetri, I'll come back to you with that as well.
Yeah, I know. And I just would like to, if I have your permission, I would like to share a trans story. Like, for example, if I were to quote a person from Alstom, and this was not at a glamorous location, it was at a tier 2 or a tier 3 city even, where we have one of our plants. And we successfully were able to support a trans journey. And to just quote this person anonymously, at the age of 14, I started realizing something is wrong with my body and my mind. They didn't sync anymore. I wasn't comfortable with the way my body was transforming post-puberty. I started looking for answers, and I realized I am a trans man. At this juncture, I didn't have the courage to open up the subject with my family. I wasn't afraid about them, but I was more worried about how this would traumatize my parents and how would they answer relatives and handle pressure from social circles. I decided to move on with my life and keep things to myself. Since I was born female and my actions were more like male, I was fortunate enough to be interpreted like a brave and vibrant tomboy. I was happy with this because at a minimum, I could dress up the way I wanted. I completed my graduation and started my career. My professional journey with Alstom started 5+ years ago. After a few years of joining Alstom and being self-sustained adult, I was no longer able to hold my thoughts. I decided to come out with my family. Around the same time, I informed my line manager and the Alstom HR about the transition that I planned to do. Alstom HR was so understanding and supportive. They heard me out patiently. The management assured me that they will support throughout my transition. Adequate care was taken to maintain utmost confidentiality till date, which is what I sought. I think stories like these are very powerful.
Thank you for that, and thank you for sharing that story, Shamala. Very touching. I'm conscious of the time, so Trinetri, I'll come back to you with the next question that I had, the evolution of this discussion. Everyone's talked about the importance of allies, first I'd like to hear your perspective for the general audience who probably have a question of what is an ally, and then why is that important in the workplace?
Right. Thanks, Ravin. And I really loved the way we could handle resistance, like I answered by my fellow panelists, right? So what really is an ally? An ally really is a friend, right? And what does a friend do? A friend really offers unconditional support, somebody who will stand up, somebody who you can trust on and rely upon, and somebody who will also show you the mirror. It's not always the good things, right? There's got to be somebody who would also show you the mirror to tell you where you're going wrong, right? So that's what an ally really is all about, a friend. A friend is somebody you term possibly as for an individual, but an ally is a friend to the entire community, right? So that's what it is. And how can you be an ally? There's so many ways of you being an ally. For one, let's start off with just using our pronouns, right? Like I go with the pronoun she, her, on our email signatures for that matter. We can have visible, visible stuff showcasing us as being allies. Like you could have lanyards, badges, stickers, and the likes of it. Like I think Nandita mentioned at the previous panel, an ally is really, really important for the community. I think an ally is a part of the community, really, right? They are the vocal, the neutral voice, if I can say so, for the community. So it's very important that the allies stand up and be vocal, visible. And the other very important thing that I think that as an ally you should be doing is the trust that I just spoke about. That's a very essential part of it as well. If a person has come out to you, it is under no circumstance that you should either encourage that person to come out, globally, or should you out that person, right? So I think these are very important things for an ally to do. And in a corporate space, I think an ally is the change maker. They are the ones who advocate the change to go through. So I think it's really important to have a friend for the community, really. So that's my take on what an ally is.
Thank you, Trinetri. Excellent answer. So the final question I'd like to pose to you, Anubhuti, for the general audience who's here today with lots of questions. What kind of advice would you want to give to queer and non-queer youngsters that are taking their first footsteps into the corporate space in terms of inclusivity and making the workspace more befitting for all of us?
That's a brilliant question, because I think I wanted a platform where I could have asked this question when I was kind of beginning my career. I think what I really want the generation who's just stepping in to ask questions of their workplaces, because it's going to be a very large journey for them. It's going to be a very long period in which they will be both part of the organizations, be a brand, part of the brand of the organization, as well as create a brand themselves. So I think at this point, it becomes very important for them to ask that inclusion is one of the basic minimums that should be availed by the organizations that they are joining. And also how they can make a choice is by making a choice on basis their inclusion, or basis how inclusive a corporate is. I remember that a few years ago, there was someone who was going to join us from IIT KGP, and they got in touch with me and they asked that does Tata Steel have LGBTQ inclusive policy? And I told them that yes, we recently started this employee resource group, and that made the decision for them to join the organization. So that is the kind of choices that youngsters are making at this point of time, and anyone who's not inclusive will lose out. So therefore, it's really onus on us and onus on the youngsters as well to make sure that it's a conscious choice that they make.
Thank you very much for that. Anu, Trinetri, you have something to say to that? Yes, go ahead.
Yes. I mean, I love that question, actually, Ravin. So, I think the Gen Z is in a very, very unique position today, because, this word, the LGBT word, the terminology or the acronym has really come out of that proverbial closet that it was in, and it's now come mainstream, right, into the corporate world. So I think very, and a lot of companies actually coming out as visible allies, right? So I think what the youngsters today have, they have the advantage in the power of media, social media. They have a lot of information, right? So they're very informed when it comes to topics like LGBT, which we were not, right? Like Mahesh had mentioned a few minutes ago in his conversation. We didn't have that much information earlier, right? So with that advantage, with the information they have, they're a lot more empathetic. So I think it's very important for them to, number one, show us, we belong to a previous generation, right, where we are trying to do things the way we are. It's very important that I think they come out, step up, and let us know where is it that we're going wrong. They should hold us accountable for things that we think maybe are doing right, but maybe may not be the right thing, at the end of it. So I think it's very important that they redefine inclusion for us so that we can have a more inclusive society tomorrow. And for the people primarily from the queer community, I think I would want to pass this information, this advice on, as much as it might be difficult when you're stepping into the corporate world. If you yourself are not going to be comfortable with your identity, with your orientation, I don't think it's a fair ask to expect society to embrace you that way, right? So I think it's important that you acknowledge your own orientation, and then we work together to make it a more inclusive place. With your help, I'll be able to do that change. I'll be able to make that change. And when I say I speak on behalf of all of us here on this panel, really. So I mean, that's my take on, or my advice that I would give to the youngsters walking into the corporate space soon.
Excellent. Be comfortable in your own shoes before you can expect others to be comfortable in your shoes. That's very, very profound, Trinetri. Thank you for sharing that. Shamala and Yamini, anything you want to share on that particular question before we wrap up the panel?
I think Trinetri summed it very, very well. I think it's about acceptance. Acceptance starts from within. And once that is there, you have all the support around to make that happen. Very well articulated, nothing more.
Excellent. Yamini, final word from you.
I love Gen Z. They don't care about all the rules we have made before. They don't care. They just bring their own thing and they want things to be that way, right? Companies did not care about environment until Gen Z started to come. Even the fear of Gen Z made companies more sustainable, right? They can change the world so quickly, right? LGBTQ is a conversation that we are having, 5 of us right now, and the people who are watching. Maybe 10 years down the lane, it'll be so common. It'll be like, why did you spend time having a conversation about it? Why was this a thing you had to struggle with? So I don't know what the future of this will be. I think it's just going to become a very common thing with Gen Z. And I really hope that they bring those amazing changes that we expect from them into the environment, whether on the professional front or the family front or the personal front.
Thank you for that. Dams are their strongest just before they break under the flood. So be prepared, Corporate India. Gen Z is upon us. Thank you very much, ladies, for being part of this panel. First, I must compliment Bruno and the IFKI team. The panels get better and better year on year, and to have such profound experience as well as knowledge on this panel has been a big learning experience for me myself as well. So I've been very fortunate to be here asking you these questions. I'm sure you get a lot of questions from people who have been listening. They might reach out to you by email directly, but thank you so much for making the time. Shamala particularly, I know you're not feeling too well today, so thank you for staying on, hanging in there to answer all of our questions. Anu, Trinetri, Yamini, an absolute pleasure. Good luck. I have only one misfortune, that was this was virtual because I didn't get to meet you in person. I do hope that'll happen soon one day. Thank you very much, ladies. And Bruno, back to you.
Thank you, Ravin, on behalf of all of us. You're an excellent moderator. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. It was a privilege to have a conversation with every one of you.
Absolutely. Have a good day.
So on this note, I thank all the panelists and our moderator, Mr. Ravin Mirchandani, for this brilliant discussion. The interaction, including business and culture, has really been enlightening. So thank you, all of you. And now, as we come towards the end of the webinar, I would like to invite Mr. Toby Lawson, Chief Executive and Chief Country Officer, Société Générale, to share his closing remarks.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And let me just start by saying what a fantastic seminar we've had, 2 wonderful panels, quite inspiring to say the least. There are many, many times when you get to participate and listen in to great conversations. And this afternoon was one of the great conversations, I think, on what is a critically important topic, not only within society, but within our corporate world, which we're all working towards. If I reflect a little bit on panel 1, the key stories around transformation were true about the hardship and the journey, if you will, dating back some 25 years and going forward, to think that we still have a long way to go, but those transformative stories reflect strongly. And I think Kesha mentioned as well about the corporate advocacy being pushed at his level to change minds and to change policies within his corporate environment, certainly worked to great effect and is admirable. I also thought that the point about education, which is quite interesting, because when we think about our youth, I think it's absolutely clear that youth comes with innocence, and the idea that there is discrimination in society does not compute to most children. But unfortunately, what happens through institutions of education and through workforce environments, those prejudices can be reaffirmed that may not have existed prior to that and may not have even existed within their family units. And so the key element out of that panel is that education is critical. And it's a critical part of bringing that in, not only to the school level, but also at the university and obviously into the workplace. And so I felt very strongly that, yes, our youth will find the answer, but they need to find the institutions that are there to support them once they move through the education process and into the workforce. I think on the second panel, I think the one thing I was really impressed about was this idea of readiness. And I'm always drawn to a quote about the idea of purpose in life. And the purpose in life really, as someone said, is to plant the trees in the knowledge that you will not benefit from the shade that they will deliver. And so when we think about the idea of are we ready, the idea is absolutely. The job is to bring about change, is to plant the trees for the benefit of the future generations. And so if we don't take up the challenge now, then we are not doing we're not being responsible and we're not living to the purpose we should. And I think obviously in the workplace with Société Générale, what I would say is that, we take it very seriously. We see the challenges that have existed around the world being a global company. We've implemented our D&I strategies with a sensitivity around the locations to try to draw upon our staff to change minds, to change culture, and to bring about what I would hope one day to be a conversation where it really isn't the topic, that we just talk, as we say, as people and not as different genders, different identities and what have you, that we are just all people living and working and collaborating together. So I'd like to thank IFCI once again for promoting this topic and bringing it forth into a very, very effective panel. I'd like to thank very much our colleagues from the Global Solutions Centre, it's their leadership, Philippe, Mahesh and the team, it's their leadership that is bringing about change in their organisation. And I'm inspired by their example for the investment bank here in India to drive the change as well. And we'll continue to progress, we'll continue to participate, we'll continue to educate and advocate for equality in the workplace and equality for all citizens in India. Thank you very much. I really very much appreciated the opportunity and I'm very proud to be a part of this panel and this conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson, for this impactful message. We will really take this forward. And now, last but not the least, I would like to call Bruno, our Regional Director, Mr. Bruno Broncard, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Dear all, it was a great pleasure to welcome you to this session organized in partnership with Société Générale. IFCI is dedicated to supporting the efforts of its member companies to understand and implement these workplace best practices that includes obviously LGBTQIA, but also gender equality and more generally inclusion. I would like to thank our esteemed panelists for their input and insight. Société Générale, our co-sponsor. A great thank to the Société Générale team, Vina, Kalpita, Anushi, Harpreet, I hope I'm not missing anybody, and IFCI team, Pranita, Arushi, Surya, and Anjula. Wishing you all a great weekend and see you very soon for maybe edition number 3. Thank you.